Hello and welcome. You've tuned in to ARIRANG News. It's Tuesday, November 25th here in Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Let's check out the stories we are following at this hour. Iran and 6 Western powers agreed to extend the deadline to reach an agreement on Tehran's nuclear program. They now have until July of next year to seal a deal. After 2 years in office, the U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel resigns. Reports say he was forced out in part over a difference in opinions. And despite unfavorable and sluggish market conditions, Korea's #1 automaker Hyundai Motor Group revises its yearly sales goal up to 8 million units. But we begin with the developments from the U.S. state of Missouri. It's about 11 p.m. there, but the late hour is not stopping angry protesters from vandalizing cars and damaging property. All of this comes a couple of hours after a grand jury announced a decision in the shooting death of Michael Brown. Kim Hyun-bin has our first story.
A grand jury has decided not to indict police officer Darren Wilson, who is white, in the shooting death of Michael Brown, an unarmed black teenager. An incident that sets off weeks of demonstrations over the summer.
They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Shortly after the announcement, there were reports of gunshots fired, looting, and clashes with police. U.S. President Barack Obama, in response to the grand jury's decision, called on people to remain calm.
First and foremost, we are a nation built on the rule of law. And so we need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
Brown's family said they were profoundly disappointed by the jury's decision, but asked people to channel their frustration in ways that will make a positive difference. The grand jury that decided against indicting Darren Wilson was made up of 9 white and 3 black members. They began meeting in late August, shortly after the incident, and heard evidence provided by the prosecution, as well as eyewitness accounts of the altercation that left 18-year-old Michael Brown dead. Brown's family lawyer says the teen was not resisting when he was shot at 12 times. Police officer Wilson's supporters say he opened fire in self-defense. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Now, it was a rather surprising resignation and the first change in cabinet since Democrats in the U.S. were defeated in midterm elections a few weeks ago. Defense Chief Chuck Hagel stepped down from his post on Monday, Washington time. Our Choi Yoo-sun tells us more.
It's been the greatest privilege of my life, to lead, and most important, to serve with the men and women of the Defense Department and support their families.
The U.S. Defense Secretary's resignation on Monday is the Obama administration's first cabinet shakeup after the Democratic Party suffered crushing losses in midterm elections a few weeks ago. Praising Hagel's ability to balance defense reforms at home and addressing external security challenges, President Obama, however, did not mention the specifics that led to his departure.
Now, last month, Chuck came to me to discuss the final quarter of my presidency and determined that, having guided the department through this transition, it was an appropriate time for him to complete his service.
When the former Republican senator and Vietnam War veteran was appointed to head the Pentagon nearly 2 years ago, he was tasked with bringing home troops from Afghanistan and Iraq and slashing the defense budget. Since then, Washington's military policies have shifted in response to growing security threats from Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria. Reports had emerged of a rift between Hagel and the administration on the U.S. strategy against the extremist group. Analysts suggest Hagel may have been the fall guy as the Republicans, now in control of both congressional houses, are expected to scrutinize the administration's foreign policies. Hagel will stay in his role until his successor is named and confirmed by the Senate. Some possible candidates include Michelle Flournoy, a former Undersecretary of Defense, and former Deputy Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
Officials from Iran and 6 world powers, including the U.S. and Germany, have agreed to not agree. Both said significant progress was made over Tehran's nuclear program, but apparently not enough to reach a deal this time around. Shin Se-min has this story.
A new deal has been set for a deal over Tehran's nuclear capabilities after negotiations to reach a comprehensive agreement in Vienna failed. 5 world powers plus Germany and Iran decided instead to give themselves an additional 7 months to hammer out an agreement. The two sides have been discussing the terms of Tehran scaling back its nuclear program in exchange for easing Western sanctions that have hurt the Iranian economy. They will reconvene in December to pick up where they left off. Iranian leader Hassan Rouhani said most gaps had been removed through the talks, while U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said the discussions had been difficult.
These talks aren't going to suddenly get easier just because we extend them. We believe a comprehensive deal that addresses the world's concerns is possible. It is desirable.
A temporary nuclear agreement that mandates Iran avoid sensitive nuclear activities gives Tehran access to some $700 million of its assets per month and lets it continue with its nuclear-related research and development. The major sticking points in a permanent agreement appear to center on what sanctions would be lifted and how much uranium Iran would be allowed to enrich. The West has long believed that Tehran has designs on building nuclear weapons. Iran insists its nuclear program is intended solely to diversify its energy sources. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Now, the two Koreas have drifted apart in many ways since the Korean War. One of the more evident differences after some 60 years of separation is people's physical health. North Korean children are now a lot shorter than South Korean kids, not to mention Pyongyang's infant mortality rate is much higher. Park Ji-won has our next report.
Malnutrition, a lack of clean water, and poor public health infrastructure. These are just some of the chronic health challenges ordinary North Koreans face. The combination of these factors can be seen clearly in the widening height gap between Koreans from either side of the border. For adult men, the gap is about 15 centimeters on average. For 11-year-old boys, it's even worse, the gap reaching nearly 20 centimeters. Due to the stunted growth of many of its citizens, the North Korean military was forced to lower its minimum height requirement to 138 centimeters 2 years ago. The dire conditions have caused the gap into Korea's life expectancy and infant mortality rate to widen as well. The life expectancy gap is 12 years, with North Koreans living an average of less than 70 years, while South Koreans live 81 years on average. The infant and child mortality rate in North Korea is also 9 times higher than that of South Korea.
North Korean children are consistently exposed to poor hygiene, such as unsterilized water, due to the country's lack of electricity and awful public health system.
The main causes of death are also very different. The percentage of people who die from infectious diseases in North Korea is 5 times higher than that of South Korea. Taking Germany's case before reunification, the gap in life expectancy between people in West and East Germany was only 3 years at the time of their reunification in 1990, and it took nearly 20 years to close that relatively small gap. Experts say narrowing the huge health gap between the two Koreas is an urgent matter.
Helping North Korea build a reasonable health service is a top priority. A large portion of the cost of unification will be spent on establishing a public health system in North Korea.
Experts add that securing a safe water supply and developing agricultural technologies are also required to boost the health of ordinary North Koreans. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung Live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. President Park Geun-hye has called for the government's new safety ministry and personnel management agency to promptly reorganize after restructuring and to carry on their responsibilities of making Korea a safer country. Highlighting the safety ministry's mission to swiftly and effectively handle all types of disasters, the president said more specialists in the area should be recruited. She then talked about revamping the personnel appointment system in public service to increase the openness and expertise of the public, thereby enhancing competitiveness in the sector. Meanwhile, referring to her push to reform the public employee pension, President Park urged her officials to seek understanding from public officials. Now, the market conditions for Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors aren't exactly ideal right now, with the weakening Japanese currency and the sluggish global economic recovery. Yet, Korea's top automaker has managed to sell over 6 million units worldwide as of October and says it's going to up its yearly goal. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia Motors have laid out a goal of selling 8 million units this year. Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Mong-gu encouraged employees on Monday, saying that while the market conditions are tough due to the weak Japanese yen and strong Korean won, companies shine brightest in times of difficulty. Korean exporters and especially automakers have been struggling due to the falling Japanese currency as it erodes the price competitiveness of their products against their Japanese rivals. But with Hyundai Kia's global sales already standing at over 6.5 million units in the first 10 months of this year, the auto group expects sales for all of 2014 to beat an earlier target of 7.86 million. The new goal comes as the company enjoyed a better-than-expected performance in emerging markets. Sales in India and Brazil rose 8% and 7.2% respectively in the January to October period on year, while sales in China jumped over 10%. Reaching the 8 million target also means that Hyundai and Kia, which together rank 5th in global auto sales, are one step closer to becoming a top-notch global automaker. After selling 8 million units in 2006, Toyota saw a rapid increase in sales and outpaced General Motors, then the world's #1 automaker, in 2008. Hyundai and Kia will now prepare for what lies ahead by improving quality, raising production, and aggressively targeting emerging markets. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Those with plans to buy furniture in Korea have been and still are anxiously waiting for December 18th to come. That's when world-famous furniture retailer IKEA opens its first store in Korea. But even before the launch, Korea's Fair Trade Commission says it's going to launch an inquiry into product pricing. This is in response to allegations that the company has set higher prices in Korea, up to nearly double the price seen in other parts of the world. An official from the watchdog says a consumer group will be tasked with comparing the prices. The results will be published around February. The commission says the findings will help consumers make smarter choices and could even pressure IKEA to voluntarily cut its prices. Now, yesterday, we reported about how the average Korean woman is almost forced to choose between her career and raising a child due to a lack of policy support. Well, today we have even more data reaffirming that reality and the impacts of it as well. Here's our Lee Ji-yoon for this report.
Getting married, giving birth, and raising children all seem to be keeping Korean women from working. In its latest report, the Korea Economic Research Institute compared the country's economic activity rate to that of 7 OECD member countries. The economic activity rate measures the proportion of the working-age population who are working or are available for work or training. The 7 leading OECD countries, which include the United States and Japan, all have populations of more than 10 million and an average employment rate of 70%. For Korean women between the ages of 25 and 54, the institute says the economic activity rate stood at about 63%. Compare that to the average of 76.2% for the 7 OECD countries, and you have an over 13 percentage point difference. The employment rate for women in Korea wasn't any better. A little over 60% of them are currently employed, while the average employment rate for Korea's 7 OECD counterparts was nearly 72%. While women in Korea are struggling to stay in the job market, the employment rate for Korean men was actually a bit higher than that of the 7 OECD countries' average. Older people in Korea also seem to be working more than ever as the country's aging population is growing. Korea's economic activity rate, as well as the employment rate for people aged 65 or older, was more than double the average for the 7 OECD countries. Experts say the government needs to introduce a more flexible work system for women, so they're willing and able to work even after having a child. They add reducing the wage gap with men might also help, while also lowering the cost for marriage and childbirth. Lee Jun, ARIRANG News.
It's not the first time we are reporting on the convergence of IT technology and wearables. Here's another example. Researchers have developed a sensor that can be paired with wearable devices with hopes of helping people prevent cardiovascular diseases. Kwon So-ah has more.
The high potential for wearable technology has already been predicted by market watchers. And apart from making life more comfortable and fun, it could eventually be a lifesaver. A joint research team from Korea and the United States recently developed a sensor that can be stuck to your skin like a Band-Aid and could provide early detection of cardiovascular diseases such as heart attacks or strokes. Tens of thousands of microcilia, or hair-like extensions of cell surfaces, have been bedded into a sensor the size of a fingernail. These can then measure fine waves in blood vessels. When integrated with smartwatches or other wearable devices, it'll become easy and efficient to monitor one's health, especially since strokes and heart failure can strike suddenly.
While it was difficult to respond to emergency cardiovascular diseases with existing equipment, due to their complexity and high price, the new wearable sensor will be able to help in emergency situations.
Cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death in the world. The World Health Organization forecasts more than 23 million people will die of heart attacks or strokes by the year 2030. Cost-effective wearable sensors could be the answer for low- and middle-income countries, as 80% of CVD-related deaths occur in that group. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And shifting to somewhat of a lighter story, it first started with Korea's popular animation Tayo the Little Bus, and now it's children's all-time favorite, Pororo. While Tayo was used to decorate buses, Pororo is decorating the insides and outsides of a number of taxis here in Seoul. Our Connie Lee shows us what those taxis look like.
Pororo, the little penguin with his yellow helmet and orange goggles, is now coming to you in taxis. Starting Tuesday, 20 of these so-called Pororo taxis are running on the streets of Seoul. From the outer decorations to inner car accessories, Pororo and his friends have taken over these cars, much to the delight of Korean children. No wonder Pororo is also deemed the children's president. Passengers can ride with this popular animation character for a test period until May of next year. The fares for these Pororo taxis are the same as other regular taxis in Seoul, and because there were only a handful available, reservations can be made online.
We came up with this idea when we were thinking about how to increase people's use of taxis, even if it's not only by a little bit.
Pororo is just the latest animated TV character to be featured on public transportation in the capital. Tayo, the little bus, has been literally running the streets of Seoul since March. And with its huge popularity, the one-month test term has been extended until the end of this year. And the larva character is plastered all over a train on Seoul's subway line 2, entertaining the eyes of passengers since the beginning of this month. Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon says the coming of life of these characters is a way to decorate the city, And of course, please the little ones. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
In Korea, some plays are marketing themselves as healing performances as they claim to heal those in the audience. Today, our Im Yoon-hee has a look at a few recent healing performances. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon, that's right. So the arts can be really considered, it can be argued that they're a source of healing, whether it be through painting or through music. Now with the holiday season fast approaching, of course, you can guarantee stress levels will go up, so why not wash away some of those winter blues with a musical or a play? Take a look.
This store owner has scars from his past, but so do all of his customers. The play Midnight Restaurant illustrates how people from different walks of life, each with a burden to bear, come together for a midnight meal to heal.
It's not about making the audience feel sorry for others. We just wanted people to see the play and think, ah, I see, and relate to the honest words and genuine people.
Acclaimed Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen's Pillars of Society is also another source of reflection and healing. Bernick is a businessman of a small town with plans for a lucrative deal. But in his struggle to climb to the top, he's made sacrifices and cut many others down. Just when he thinks he's gotten away with everything, his plans blow up, and now his son's life is in jeopardy. And some say exercise is a good source of healing. These young college ballet artists struggle to perfect their sport and start their careers. And along the way, a love story blossoms.
Even though the theater is small, you get a chance to see a ballet here. The audience can evaluate for themselves and see the honest truth.
All right, so I have to be honest here. Some may argue that just by watching the performances is not enough to be healed. So what do people say is the healing factor for these performances?
Well, let's start with the first performance you saw. They're calling it an all-encompassing performance, so they're really playing on the different senses as well. So they're actually going to be cooking at the performance, and they say that smell really is going to capture the audience and bring them in, and that's what they want to do. They want to draw in the audience to their performance, so you feel like you're sitting at that table next to these people, identifying with them, talking to them, learning about these different lives, and thus, I guess, de-stressing and kind of just relaxing and healing yourself as well.
All right, so let's talk about the Pillars of Society. That's the second performance you brought, and the writer, if I remember correctly, he has written a couple of plays similar with the same somewhat of a same theme.
Exactly. So Henrik Ibsen, he's actually the second most performed playwright behind Shakespeare. And so he is known for his revolutionary works, and he's even been called the father of realism with his plays, which is why they're so often performed. So he was really the first to kind of take this realistic approach to the theater. And so if you go there, you can see kind of he's not afraid to show a different side to society, maybe the more unpleasant, the more realistic side. And so with these performances, people are saying, the audience members are saying that they go there and they kind of are able to more relate to these characters and at the same time kind of feel more grateful for what they have in their life.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for bringing the story today.
It's always a pleasure.
We're enjoying a brighter day than yesterday here in Seoul. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. All of the rain has cleared out now except on the east coast where light rain lingers. Now this rain is expected to continue until later this afternoon, totaling up to about 30 millimeters along with some strong winds. Now also more snow is expected to fall over in the mountainous regions of Gangwon-do province today between 1 to 5 centimeters. So for those of you on the roads, please be extra careful. Now, but in general, a mild day is expected elsewhere, while the fine dust level have gone down to their normal levels and daytime highs will range in the low to mid-teens. And to our ratings for today, Seoul will peak at 15 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top to 16 and 15 degrees. And to other regions, Jeju Island brings to 15 as well, while Dokdo hits 11, while Angkor can be a bit lower at 9 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
Well, that's all we have for now. More news coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time. Thank you for watching.